especially with another dependent to be responsible for. So I made that executive decision. Years later, who would have known I would say this, but I do not regret that one bit.
Buying a piece of property is a tremendous investment. An array of legal issues comes into effect when buying or selling real estate.
That's a really deep question. So I was raised by a single mother and she did her best. She was also a very hardworking person. Seeing her wake up every morning, get ready and go to work, embedded in my brain, this is just life, like this is just how you have to work. To be honest, I dropped out of university. I was studying criminology and I had my son at 17 years old. 17 in a university with a lot of financial responsibility. I wanted to study criminology to be a defendant, like a defense lawyer. Going into real estate, getting away from law, but then coming back into law was so destined.
Is somebody born with an innate desire to be successful? Ladies and gentlemen, episode 2 of the Meeting Gold Show from season 2. Yes, that's right. We've begun season 2, and I'm hoping that you're liking the content we pushed out from the last episode. But today we have a pretty interesting guest. Now, before I introduce her, she's the president at Endhome. Now, Brianna Frith,
yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about Endhome.
Endhome is a consulting agency, and we actually work with homeowners, real estate agents, mortgage agents, anyone who basically needs to be connected with a real estate lawyer. For any reason, whether it's selling their home, refinancing, purchasing, doing their wills, or just getting legal advice. I'm that middlewoman, and so I founded Endhome to basically merge the gap, close any sort of inefficiencies, and just basically be a constructive firm in Ontario and British Columbia for Ontarians who need real estate legal services.
That's interesting. I want to ask, and I'm going to challenge you here, why would somebody not go direct to the lawyer?
They would, usually. Actually, they'll probably do a Google search and find the cheapest one or find the one that's open 24 hours or whatever they're looking for. But they're not necessarily, if it's their first time buying a home, they're not necessarily aware of all of the potential pitfalls that could occur. I think people that have already been through it are now refinancing for their third time or buying their second home are more understanding and compassionate towards the reality that not every single real estate law firm is completely centered around client service. So why would they come to me? Well, they'd probably come to me because they've had an experience before that wasn't so good. And because I have that offering and that value, they would see great alignment with working with Endhome.
That's interesting. So from what I'm hearing, I would consider you the realist of the industry, of the law industry, because there can be a lot of shadows and misconceptions in that area. Now, what we're trying to do in the season 2 is tell more stories. We want to tell stories so people can kind of get out what they need to get out of those stories in terms of learning lessons or just being intrigued. So I want to ask you today, and I remember telling you this off camera, and you seemed pretty excited to tell it.
Yes.
I have here, what is the most shocking case story that you've had or that the public would think is shocking?
Well, when I first started Endhome, my vision was, let's start with the basics. Let's do refinances, mortgage purchases, resales, new builds, sales, whatever is basically that mainstream generic selection for anyone that's going into the market. I didn't really think that we would represent banks at all. I wasn't really, even entertaining that because I thought I didn't want to bite too much that I could chew. However, I got a LinkedIn DM one day, and it was 11:30 p.m., and this investor reached out to me, and he goes, I have a lender rep, which is a syndicated mortgage closing with 9 different investors closing in 2 days. Would you be able to do it? And my original reaction was, I need to figure out how, so I'm not going to say no because that word's not in my vocabulary. Have I done one before? Not directly, but I was kind of exposed to it. Previously, before opening Endhome, I was in the mortgage field for a little while, especially working at like investment corporations, anything to do with private lending. So I was aware about what a syndicated mortgage was. But anyways, we got to talking, and I signed the file the next morning, right away. And we did it. We did a lender representation file, which was syndicated mortgage, 9 investors. We had to meet every single investor. We also had to take money in our accounts up to $4 million, and then obviously be responsible for that. So it's a lot of liability. It's also very interesting because it's so many moving parts going on at once, but happening in such little time So there was pressure because now being the president of Endhome, like everything falls back on me. It's my name. Regardless of what lawyer I assign the file to, I handpicked that lawyer. So at the end of the day, it really falls back on me. And, you know, being able to conquer that file and knock it out of the park like it was nothing just opened my eyes to how much more I can do at Endhome. So like I said, like we started with residential borrower representation where we're representing the borrower. And then 2 months into my business, we're already representing banks and lenders.
That's incredible. Did you ever imagine that there would be an option to do that so soon into starting your own company?
No, like I said, I thought I was biting off way more than I could chew when I even thought about lender rep. And also, like, I'm a perfectionist, so when I'm marketing, I want to be very consistent. And I want to make sure I'm telling everyone and keeping them up to speed with what services I offer. So as soon as I did that, I put that on my website. I'm like, okay, we're doing lender rep now, you know, let's get it going. I did previously select lawyers who all had 10 years experience minimum. So with that being said, you would assume they have so much expertise, not just the basic type of deals that you see in the real estate market. But I think that's really what helped me have that backup structure to support this last minute deal that I got.
That's interesting. So lawyers love you.
Yes. Oh, I make it rain for them, right? So they, because it's so much more like to be a salesperson. I mean, I was a mortgage agent and that is all sales because you're selling mortgages to people. But it's B2C, right? You're directly to the client, you're representing them, you're guiding them, and then, you know, some brokerages have underwriters, so they do all the talking with the banks. But actually being B2B is so much different because I'm going directly to real estate agents and mortgage agents. I'm not going to homeowners and asking them if they're ready to retain a lawyer, because how I look at that is I can actually help on such a much larger scale if I go directly to these agents who have a plethora of different clientele who may or may not need a lawyer. Some already have because this is their fourth investment. They already have a go-to. But if I could be that backup solution for those last minute deals that come through the door and really just save the day, like that's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be that go-to destination for anyone when they think of a real estate lawyer.
What is something, I love that. What is something that lawyers typically lack that you provide immensely?
I would say, you know, client service can be, it could be quantified by just the simple fact of, you know, sending a survey. Oh, are you happy? Are you satisfied? Poor, 1 to 5, rate me. But it really goes so much deeper than that because you're dealing with their life savings. Like these are hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going into lawyers' trust accounts, and the lawyer has to have the client's best interest. So I find sometimes lawyers, they don't understand how to comfort the client and not speak so much legal jargon and kind of tone it down to communicate better and more efficient so that the client feels welcome. And in turn, it gives the client some sort of like anxiety, especially leading up to closing day. Some lawyers also are not the best at communication, which means they're not calling the client to just say, hey, everything's going well, sleep at night, you know, because like they want to make sure their house closes. If not, there's extensions, builder fees, there's all these penalties, right? And especially if there's a mortgage and you're selling the property and that mortgage is maturing, what happens when it matures, right? You have to pay it out. If you can't pay it out from the purchaser's proceeds, you're in a really tight position. So I think they need to really take more into consideration how much they play a role in helping this deal close.
Interesting.
And registering that charge more than just, yeah, okay, you've been a lawyer for decades or months or years, whatever the case is. Yeah, you know what you're doing, but does your client believe you know what you're doing? Do you feel like you've given them enough confidence, or have you just said you're a lawyer, made them sign something and kind of kept it moving just for money, right?
Do you have, I appreciate that because I think there is a lack of communication, and to have somebody that specializes in more so what you do is the actual communication of the job, not just the law side or the mortgage side. It's more just communicating with the client. You are the one that deals directly with clients.
I am. And I also deal directly with the brokers. So sometimes in deals, I experienced this in my previous corporate position at a law firm. I realized that when anything went wrong, the lawyer would email the client. And I would always ask why. The client didn't come here by themselves. Their broker referred them to us, right? So what you would want to do in that case is let the broker know first, give them that power to distinguish how they want to communicate and translate that message to their client, because they just spent months trying to get this approval. they're going to send them to a lawyer. The lawyer is going to like drop the ball, and the client's going to have a panic attack over, you know, bad news of, well, we haven't gotten mortgage instructions from the bank, you know, and we're 3 days before.
That leads me into my next question I want to ask you. Because you deal directly with clients, do you have any stories that you can anonymously tell us about clientele that's been like, what do you expect from me? I cannot do everything. It's a tough question.
I can't do everything?
That a client would expect you to do something that maybe the lawyer was supposed to do.
To be honest, I've always been really ahead of the curve. So I've basically made no room for that to happen. My processes are so fail-safe. And I don't want to come off like, oh, everything's just so perfect. But I try to set their expectations really realistically. Okay. And I think that sets the tone, because then there's no reason for them to expect me to do something that a lawyer would do and vice versa. I really kind of initiate that initial expectation line and say, this is a sweet spot. This is what I'm here to do. I will always go above and beyond. I will always intervene because that's my job. And even going as far as lining up portals and having them have a login, you know, that's something I've always wanted. And now being in a company where I can execute and form and develop any sort of technology that I want, giving them that power to just log in and check the status of their transaction is immeasurable.
How do you go about setting those expectations? Because in any business, a lot of people struggle with that, is missed communication on expectations, and then something goes down, something happens, and it all comes down to, oh, I expected this of you. You didn't fulfill what I expected. Goodbye. And that's how a lot of businesses lose clients. I
agree. Yeah. No, I think the main core important factor there is have a phone call. Like every single transaction should start with a voice. If you can't do it face-to-face, it should start with that phone call. Then they hear your tone. They kind of hear your character. They warm up to you. They're also very confident, because then I take the time to explain why they need our service. Why? Well, the bank is saying that in order for you to close this mortgage, they need you to have independent legal advice. They're not going to close this mortgage without you getting this advice. So Endhome will definitely support you. We'll connect you with a lawyer that specializes in independent legal advice, and you'll close your transaction peacefully at an affordable rate. If they have any questions, I make sure I answer them, or if I can't, because if it's more like legal, if it's a more legal-sided question, I can't really talk about that, but I'll refer them to the lawyer, regardless of the fact, guide them and help them navigate the space in a comfortable way, so they're never feeling like they're disconnected or, you know, just unsure about anything going on. They're kind of just really confident. They're up to speed. And then if anything does pop up, they call me, they text me, they email me. Like, I let them do whatever form of communication works, just so they know the lines are open. And then, you know, nothing goes wrong, because all my lawyers are really experienced. On the back end as well, all of our lawyers, regardless of what province they're in, we have a back end portal so that, like, they update me on every single transaction, the status, the progress. So it's almost like we're just all interconnected. And like I said, process is everything. Without that, I don't think anything would be as streamlined.
Do you have a client branding or not client branding, but client process in terms of something from start to finish? And if you do, which I'm assuming you do, because that's pretty well your job.
Yes.
Do you, like, how did you go about creating that? Was it something that was created over time through learning, oh, there's another step in the communication process that I missed last time I went around?
Yeah. So absolutely. So before launching Endhome, I was in the similar position at a law firm for about 3 years. So really just having a close eye and narrowing in on, you know, the inefficiencies, the pitfalls, but also the really great things going on. I was able to put pieces together, improve my own process mentally in my head. Did I have the wherewithal at the time to kind of expand that and launch it to the whole firm? No, but now I am, like, literally driving the boat the way I want to, and you know, the roof is limitless.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Real estate law, law in general, is a very complicated subject for a lot of people. It
sounds like it, yeah.
It sounds like it, right?
Everyone needs it, though.
Which is so true. What are some misconceptions that the public typically has on real estate law in specific?
So I would say it comes down to pricing a lot of the times.
Interesting.
Lawyers will give you, like, a fee. They'll say, hey, my purchase price is $1,000. but they'll fail to mention like the HST, the government registration, the land transfer tax, the title insurance, the photocopying fees, faxes, couriers, disbursements, all those extra charges. Transparency really comes in there, because I feel that fills in the gap of a client feeling confident versus feeling unsure and deceived. So yeah, I feel like just making sure that you're upfront with pricing, being transparent, setting them up for a great expectation and helping them out really sets the tone for the transaction.
I want to take it back to before you started Endhomes. You were doing some things. You were dabbling in mortgages. You were in law at a law firm, and then you went off on your own. I want to ask you, when you were like much younger than you are now, almost a child, what was the expectation that maybe your parents set on you for what you were supposed to do? Because I find a lot of people, they're maybe forced into school, they're maybe forced into a career, whether you were or you weren't. Can you talk a little bit about that and expand on that situation there and why you are the way you are today?
That's a really deep question.
Yeah.
So I was raised by a single mother, and she did her best. She was also a very hardworking person. So I think I got my work ethic from her, and just seeing her wake up every morning, get ready, and go to work, it kind of started being like embedded in my brain. This is just life. Like, this is just how you have to work. Not to say I don't enjoy waking up every day early, but now as a business owner, there may be days where I need to take off, and I think I have more flexibility, but also I have the power to delegate the tasks and kind of shape my business the way I want. But growing up, my mother never forced anything on me. In fact, like, she said, do whatever makes you happy, which gave me the fluidity and like the comfort level to just explore and not worry about impressing or like trying to overachieve. To be honest, I dropped out of university. I was studying criminology, and I had my son at 17 years old. So 17 in a university with a lot of financial responsibility, OSAP doesn't give you enough to really like make a living, or especially with another dependent to be responsible for. So I made that executive decision. Years later, who would have known I would say this, but I do not regret that one bit. I came out of that, went into a completely different field. Like, I wanted to study criminology to be a defendant, like a defense lawyer. But then coming out of that, kind of going into real estate, getting away from law, but then coming back into law was so like destined. Like, it felt weird in a way, but just so meant to be, because I went away from law, went into real estate, felt like I completely just picked up a completely different industry, but then translated right back into law in a way where I'm literally like at a sweet spot where my passions just mesh perfectly. So yeah, I never was forced or like heavily influenced to do anything. My mother was a very like office, like downtown Bay Street kind of
Interesting.
person.
Did you grow up in Toronto area?
No, Scarborough actually. Yes.
Really?
I lived there for 14 years in a house with my mother. Her dad owned the house actually, so we were always good. Like, we were, you know, ups and downs, but we were good. I was really happy because I got all of her attention, and I was a single child. I still am. So, you know, I learned from that, and with my child now, it's just magical because they're really like mirrors. You know, they're a reflection of you, and you see exactly what you need to work on directly, because anything they do, they probably got it from you. So it's like a walking mirror.
Yeah, that's so funny, because they just bring out every flaw in you. Yes. Although I feel like in some way you find it adorable that they do it.
It is, because it's you. It's like, oh my gosh, you're me, like half of me, literally.
Yeah. What do you think? I'm glad we kind of touched on this, and if we could go a little bit deeper into it. Hardships in growing up. I always have this conversation. I still don't know the answer to this question. Is somebody born with an innate desire to be successful financially beyond what they really need? Or is somebody built through that in their life as they grow up? What do you think?
Personally, I think it's all built. It's a step-by-step cultivation process. I really think you learn as you go in life, and, you know, you make mistakes, you learn lessons. To be honest, when mistakes happen, or like something that's unprecedented, it makes me really awkwardly excited, because I know something really good's gonna happen right after. It's just the law of polarity. It's just life. So I'm never like totally upset when something happens. I'm always hopeful. I think winners and leaders are formed over time, just off of the fact that they've taken that leap of faith. They've always stayed true to themselves, and they've always made room to do what makes them happy. And have always been determined regardless of the circumstances, you know, never really taken a step down or given up. Because I think that's really when people end up slipping and falling from themselves, when they are too hard on themselves and they judge themselves to the point where, like, they're their worst enemy, basically, because, you know, they're good and they still are hard on themselves. They're bad, they're still hard on themselves. I say just do what you want that makes you happy. Wake up, and that's success for me. I really feel like that's what makes a leader.
What pushed you to work so hard to where you became today? Because I think a lot of people don't have a sense of urgency to push them to work this job or to try to push for more. It doesn't even, forget financially, push for more in their life, do more. Be more things, have a long-lasting career. Like, there's so many different varieties, not just financially, that you can look to strive to be more. For you, what pushed you to be that hard? Was it your parent? Was it your mother? Was it, you know, high school? Was it, like, what does that look like for you?
Definitely not high school, because I was pregnant in high school and that wasn't fun. But I think, to be honest, it's passion. You know, and you're not going to be pushed to do any more if you're not passionate about that. Like, I don't know where my passion comes from. I don't know if it's biologically or, like, you know, I just woke up one day and just got super excited about life. But like I said, if something goes wrong, I get excited because I know I've lived long enough to understand that it's just a cycle. You learn, you live, and you really just can't ever give up. Personally, with passion, it's a game changer. It stands out. You can smile with your eyes in a room. People can really point out someone that's passionate about what they do versus feeling like they have to do it. Yeah, and I wouldn't ever encourage anyone, I don't care how much money you're getting paid, if you wake up and have to do something for money or for, you know, whether it's a favor, if you're not passionate about it or into it, it's not going to pay off, and you're not going to actually accelerate or get anywhere, because you're just going to always go back to that one thing that makes you passionate and end up having to, whether it's start over, reconstruct, which is fine, revamp, you know, let things go and really just welcome new things in your life. But don't second guess that inside voice, that inner being, that intuition that's telling you, like, hey, Samuel, I'm sure you're here doing this because you actually love it, right? Like, you didn't wake up or were born or even growing up thinking this would be your job. I know you probably thought it would be like,
no, I actually didn't at all.
Or somewhat in the entertainment, but like this particular thing and meeting with people and socializing, like, this is the thing that's going to make you happy. So do it.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. I want to ask, I try to talk to a lot of people about this. Their realistic or their real life kicker into what the real world is. Because I think, I remember when I was growing up, I mean, I'm only 18, but I remember when I was growing up, when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, it seemed like life had no stresses whatsoever.
Yes, I know my son, I tell him all the time, like,
he's happy as can be. He can laugh, he can joke, he can run around. It's like a puppy, right? Except I don't think a puppy ever grows out of the fun stage. And then as you get older, you slowly begin to realize life isn't all happy, right? It's not all happy. It's not all fun. There's a lot of real life kickers. For you, what was your big realistic kicker into what the real world is, and what did it teach you?
So many things. It never stops. Even today, like, little things every day makes me realize, you know, the world is a constant evolving thing. Where you fit in it is all subjective, and you're really living a life that you create for yourself, like, literally. You live the life that you see, you feel, you design, you think. Everything you think, you speak. It reflects the way you think. And in life, I've learned that, you know, making mistakes is a really good thing. And failing is a really good thing. I'm actually excited to fail sometimes because I realize it humbles me a lot. And then grounds me, disciplines me, and then I, like, transform into this really ambitious person because I have something to work for. Like, I made that mistake. I
have something to prove.
Now I have something to go and get. So, like, I always say, dissatisfaction is a state of creativity. If I'm dissatisfied, I'm creative. If I wasn't dissatisfied, I wouldn't have any reason to go and try to fix it or make it better. So like, I feel like in life, just looking for things that are destined or intuitive and really not turning a blind eye to them and acknowledging them, you can kind of live the life you want and design your life, like literally. And I've done that for myself. I've come from so many, you know, hardships, especially having a son at a young age. Like, I'm that stereotypical teenage mother who could have easily like fallen behind and really let myself go. But I just use that for every other reason and just pick myself up and do my best. So it never ends.
I was going to say, because that's not an easy thing, especially with just a mother that's like, I can't even begin to imagine what it would be like growing up with now a child. You're not even 18 yet. Right. And you have your mother, hopefully some other family to help, but still that doesn't make it, you know, any easier. For you, what was that situation like in terms of, did this push you to? Oh, yeah.
It was like a switch. As soon as I had my child, it was 360. I was always driven. I was always bright. I was always into school. You know, like I was a really, really good kid, and my mom could vouch for that. I've always tried my best.
I can tell you're probably the one that got 95s in math class.
Yes, definitely. I did math, even though it wasn't mandatory in grade 12. I still did it. But like my son now, I love him. I appreciate him for everything that he is. My mother, though, one thing that she said to me was, don't ever doubt yourself. Always believe in yourself, and don't ever sell yourself short. I think moving around and navigating in this field in general is something that you kind of learn as you go. But when you keep those core values, it really teaches you a life lesson. Growing up and being a single mother, or having a single mother and then being one, was kind of like living through my mom and like doing it all over again. But then now having the ability to make those corrections and show up in places that I felt like I could have gotten a little bit more of out of my mom. And so no one's perfect. You know, everyone has their own life. And I can only imagine what she was going through. Like, now that I'm an adult, it's a scam. Like, you have bills. You work and then your money's gone for the bills. Like, you're working to live. Like, it never ends. Being an adult is a scam. I always joke like that. But
it's like you know what? What's crazy to me is you grow up thinking there's I want to be an astronaut. And I'm not saying that's impossible. But then you realize what the world kicks. You know? So Brianna, can you tell me a little bit about, now talking about your personal life, I want to know your future plans, because we just had a great discussion off camera about everything happening for a reason and embracing the hardships that come your way. Can you expand on that? Maybe your future plans?
Yeah, so my future plans, I feel like, are going to be really centered on expanding and growing up the ladder and trying to work in more provinces in Canada. The great thing about Endhome is we can basically handpick lawyers anywhere in the country, and obviously if they align with us, train them up to our processes, set them up, and you know, scale our processes and services on a much larger scale. So I feel like in the future, I'm also going to be branching off a little bit into maybe funding and lending as well. So Endhome will not only be like a hub for lawyers, but also a hub to get funds to go to a lawyer. And I think it's just going to be...
So like a bank, almost like a banking system, but private lending.
Yes, exactly. And how I would do that was... So the connections I have right now in my network are obviously agents. And even if you lend money as a mortgage officer or whatever you are, you're still technically an agent. So within my network, I have people that obviously want to collaborate with me. And if I can handpick a great group of, you know, fantastic private lenders, which are nowadays pretty common. Not everyone's a cookie cutter, perfect A-class client that can get approved at TD or Scotia.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's not reality. But in that world, I think having an agent who specializes in private funds, obviously they have to align with me. I can quickly just set up some sort of landing page and help push different avenues of marketing materials into different provinces in the country and really hone in on not just lawyers and legal services, but also lending, so that we can really be a one-stop shop for anyone looking to buy refinance, or do anything with their assets in real estate. Yeah.
I love that because I think there's a lack of that. And I think you see it, which is why you want to do it.
Yes.
I want to ask, like, in terms of the private funding side, can you kind of break that down? How does private funding work?
Yes.
I don't think many people actually understand that.
No.
A lenders, B lenders, C lenders, Z lenders.
Yes.
Like, there's so many different varieties of lending and funding. Can you just break down a little bit of what that may look like from the bank to private to whatever that is?
Yes, so A, B, C lenders. A would be your major 5 banks. B would be like credit unions. C would be more private lending or alternative lending, they call it. Private lending is usually equity-based lending, which means lenders don't care if you're blue, purple, green. They just want to make sure your property has equity in it, so that if you were to default, they have enough loan-to-value in there to pull out their money, get their money back, pay themselves, and move on.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So if the loan-to-value is like 80% or even 90% on a property, that means that the client only has 10% of equity. So that's not even enough for closing costs if you wanted to sell. So in that kind of a case, private lenders really just look at, hey, what's your situation? First of all, are you even in, geography-wise, like are you even in the vicinity that I would lend in? They have lending guidelines. So if they only lend in St. Catharines or this kind of region, then they wouldn't obviously go to Toronto or any other. So they have really, really strict guidelines because they're investing personal funds probably from people that they've syndicated or whatnot. But higher interest rates, shorter terms. So there's no 5-year mortgage term or 1-year mortgage term like banks. Usually it's 9 months and under. And you have to have an exit strategy. So once that term's up, you got to pay them out. So let's say you're working on your credit, and that's the reason why you're going to a private lender. Make sure you're working with a mortgage agent who can transfer you from private to TD or to another A-class bank, and have that plan already strategized so you're not caught in an open mortgage where there's penalties and all that stuff. So private mortgages are good for people stuck in like a hard place, but like be cautious and be informed before you get into that. I love it. I'm not ever like putting anything down on private lending.
There's different situations.
Yeah, like if it's subjective, if it makes sense, if that agent that's representing the client is, you know, completely genuine and authentic and says this is the best option for you, go for it. But private lending is different, obviously, than your traditional lending. Majority of it is based on equity, and obviously you're paying a higher rate.
And that's what I was just going to ask you, because I have some clients of mine who are agents or investors who do a lot of private funding, who do a lot of funding from the bank, lending like that. I want to ask, what is the benefits, or what are the benefits of private lending compared to the benefits of getting funding from the bank?
Benefits is obviously if you don't fall within the cookie cutter guidelines of qualifying for your typical bank, then there's someone else who would consider you and lend money to you. It's for, let's say, purchases are not so common, to be honest. It's really rare that you hear someone, like, if you wanted to go buy a house right now, you probably wouldn't go to a private lender because that mortgage is probably going to be about $700,000 minimum. That's a lot for a private lender to lend out for one client,
I was going to say, that's a lot of capital put out.
Refinances. Privates mostly like are for refinances. So funds would be placed for people who are, let's say, refinancing to purchase. So they want to buy another property, but they want to refinance the property they're living in right now, pull money out, put that on another down payment. But let's say because they lost their job or because they changed their job or have declared less, their typical bank that they would have went to before is not going to let them pull out that money. So they'll get a private second mortgage to do whatever they want to do, renos, buy a new house, pay for their students' tuition or their kids' tuition, anything like that. They can pull money out. Private funds are much easier to get, higher interest rate, but if it makes sense and it's the only option, then you can use it for your refinance or to purchase.
Interesting. So there are strong benefits to private lending compared to the bank, because from my understanding, kind of, I'm trying to simplify. Private lending, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay more percentage on your money. When you get from private lender, right? It might be like 10, 15%, it might be 7%. But then with the bank, interest rate might be like 1, 2, 3%.
Exactly.
Now, obviously, it's going up a bit more. Right? Actually, can you touch on that a little bit? The market right now.
Yes. So the market is changing. It always is. There's so many different headlines on the news, and
that's true.
Not
we could
fair.
pull up like 30 right now. It's really not
fair because there's agents out here, and their bread and butter is closing deals, and they need clients to come to them and ask them questions and be able to actually get in their head and tell them something, and their clients believe them instead of running to the news and saying, well, the news is showing me this headline and you're showing me this one. So there's a lot of conflicting information, but there's never like a perfect time to buy. It's just what is right for you. Like, there's always going to be a deal. Right now, it's a self-correcting market. I feel like right now it's more buyer-centered. It's not a seller's market. There's 3 types of markets: seller's market, buyer's market, and then a middle neutral market.
Which like very rarely happens.
Which very rarely happens. It's actually, I don't even think there's such thing really, because how would you identify that? I mean, in the sweet spot, right now we're experiencing buyers having a great experience going after houses and getting wicked deals, like $200,000, $300,000 under what they would have paid even 3 or 4 months ago. So if you're trying to get in the market, and if it makes sense for you financially, go in the market now. But it's just something that's forever evolving. But you always have to stay informed and on top of the actual reality of the news, and look at facts, not headlines. Speak to your clients, inform them, and just make them feel comfortable, because like lawyers are protecting your interests at the end of the day. So regardless if it's a seller's, buyer's neutral market, it still goes to the lawyer. Like, that's the last step. So, you know, you have to make sure you're in good hands, and that lawyer is really going to look out for you.
I love that. Listen. Okay, so what was it? Not something, and then not headlines or something. I forget what you just said.
What did I say?
Oh, you said something like, don't.
The news headlines? Don't believe the news headlines?
Don't believe.
The hype?
Yeah, don't believe the news headlines.
No, it's not realistic.
They make for great videos for cinematic stuff.
But also, they're not mortgage agents writing the headlines.
Exactly, right?
Or like real estate professionals. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. Do your own research, and just remember, it's all about what is best for you at that time in your life. No one can tell you, whether it's seller's, buyer's market, what to do with your property or how to get into the market. Get in when you can.
At the end of the day, you do what you feel is best for the time that you're in.
Exactly.
Okay, Brianna, thank you for today. This was like, you came down from Toronto, stayed a night in a hotel to save from the early morning drive. You know what? We love it. We love bringing people in the studio space, especially when we can get into this type of intellectual talk like we did today. And also just life in general, and really talking about some hardships that you encountered. Where can people find you if they want to reach out?
You can find me on Instagram at Realty with Bri, REALTY with BRI, and then on Endhome CA, which is my business account for Endhome. Also on LinkedIn, Brianna Frith, and anything else, Facebook, Endhome, we're on there as well.
You've got to crush your Instagram pro. I'd like the Instagram pro. I can tell you put some time into that.
I do, and I don't want to spread myself thin. Like, if I find myself just making content for just making content, I'm like, no. Is this valuable? Is this going to educate anyone? Is this going to add any value in any way? If it's informative, I'll push it out. Sometimes I'll add some funny things in there, some pictures of me, but definitely staying consistent on social media is important for my business, because I think if you're not on social media already, you're going to be left behind, and everyone in the real estate space is usually on there anyways. So it's like the perfect, middle ground to me.
It's so true. It's a great lead gen. It's a great lead gen software.
It is.
Organic if you can do it properly.
It is for sure. I agree.
Well, Brianna, thank you so much. And with that said, we're going to be launching this as our second episode in season 2, which I just told you today, so that's pretty special.
Yes, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Feel free to comment down below any golden questions that you want to ask for our golden guests, such as Brianna. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.